The Samaritans, an overview. The Samaritans were a mixed race of people originally from Jewish ancestry, who were settled by the Assyrians following the exile of the majority of the Jewish community to Babylon in 721 BC. A number of the other colonists from the Assyrian Empire were also resettled into the region and intermarried with the remnant Jewish population. The Jews considered Samaritans as the descendants of Gentile tribes who were brought into Palestine to take their places when they were in captivity. The region of Samaria was located between Judea and Galilee, south of the Sea of Galilee. Jesus would have had to travel through Samarian territory as he made his way south along the River Jordan from Galilee to Jerusalem. He left Judea and started back to Galilee, but he had to go through Samaria. John 4, chapter 3. Whilst drawing from a common religious heritage, Samaritans relied primarily upon the Torah of Moses, whilst Jews placed greater emphasis on the law and the prophets. Samaritans recognized as Holy Scripture only the 5 books of Moses, and the textual form they used was different from that in use among the Jews. Sources of division and antagonism. There was a deep, long-standing antagonism between Jews and Samaritans, and each community avoided the other at all costs. Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans. Matthew 10:5. The Samaritans considered themselves to be Jewish, but the Jews of Judea and Galilee did not consider them to be real Jews, as intermarriage between Jews and Gentiles was viewed as an abomination. After the Jews returned from exile in Babylon, they had insisted that the Samaritan Jewish men renounce their marriages to Gentile women in order to be fully accepted back into the Jewish community. Their refusal to give up their families was one factor that led to the division and animosity between the two communities. Problems between the two communities were further exacerbated when 300 years earlier the Greeks had used Samaria as a base to control Jewish territory. Another source of enmity between the Jews and Samaritans sprang from the Samaritans building a breakaway temple on Mount Gerizim. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say that the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem. John 4:20. While the Jewish temple was situated in Jerusalem, the Samaritans regarded Mount Gerizim as sacred. In fact, upon the return of the Jewish community from exile, the Samaritans initially tried to prevent the building of the temple in Jerusalem, leading the Jews to ban any Samaritan from contributing to the building process. Over the centuries, hostilities erupted between the two groups. For example, the Jews destroyed the Samaritan temple in 128 BC, just prior to the birth of Christ. The Samaritans totally defiled the Jewish temple by scattering bones in the area of the sanctuary just before the Passover. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him, but they did not receive him because his face was set toward Jerusalem. Luke 9:52.